Hi, and welcome to a new episode of How to Web Life, this time on building startups the right way. Starting a startup right out of college is not an easy task for an immigrant, even in San Francisco. But Anda did exactly this. After graduating Stanford, she launched Knotch. Back then, a network that allowed people to connect with each other based on shared interests. Sounds familiar, right? A couple of pivots later, though, and after moving from San Fran to New York, Notch is now an enterprise and a content intelligence platform which raised around $35 million in venture funding. All in all, it turned out into a clear success story, enabling nowadays companies like Amazon, Facebook, Bank of America, and others to plan for breakthrough, efficiently managed content. During this episode, you'll walk through the decisions founders have to make in order to build the right product, team, and culture in order to succeed on a global scale. A regular thought leadership contributor to the trade media and industry at large, and that has been named to both Forbes annual 30 under 30s lists, Adweek's Young Influential list, and Adweek's Top 100 Creatives, just to name a few. Your host also, and already an old friend of How to Web's, Jeroen Courthout, is the founder of Salesflare, an intelligent CRM built for SMBs. Salesflare itself was founded when him and his co-founder Leven wanted to follow up with the leads for their software company in an easier way. They didn't like to keep track of their leads manually, and so they built Salesflare, which pools customer data automatically and then activates and actively helps you to follow up. We'll soon be kicking off, but not before thanking you big time for tuning in. Oh, and one more thing, Anda and Jeroen wait for your questions at any time throughout the show. Make sure you enjoy.
Hey Anda,
Hey, how
nice
you
to
doing?
doing well, doing well. It's a good day today. Weather is shit, but the rest is fine.
Same here.
Where are you based right now?
I'm currently in a hotel in Manhattan, and
Aha.
it's kind of strange to be in Manhattan. It feels like one of those zombie attack movies, where like they have people walking through Manhattan and it's completely empty. That's kind of how it feels.
Mm-hmm. I'm personally I was born not far from there, a bit
Oh, really?
upstate,
Cool.
in a town called Montkisco. But I'm apart from that fully Belgian, and I'm currently in Antwerp in Belgium.
Got it. Got it. Well, I think you have more of an accent than I do, but I don't know if I can hear it okay. So I'm
What
proud.
kind of accent? A Belgian one or?
I think so. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can't quite place it. I don't think I've heard it before.
We're here to talk startups, and I was told you have a pretty interesting story when it comes to Notch. So maybe it's good first to that you introduce what Notch does for those who don't know yet. Um, what do you guys do?
Yeah, well, what we do has really evolved since we first got started, which is part of the reason why the story is interesting. We are a content intelligence platform. So we work with big companies and medium-sized companies, and hopefully soon small companies as well, to help them understand how their content efforts are impacting their business, and to help them
Mm-hmm.
optimize how to create content strategy, content creative, media strategies, etc. So that's what we do, all about connecting content to outcomes. And we have a big vision for what the company could be, given the fact that content has become really the new strategy for almost everyone, especially since COVID. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
very excited to be in this space. But it's changed
Yeah,
a lot since we first started. I'll say that.
I'm well. We're big into content as well with Salesflare. Maybe a little intro for those watching. I think it was mentioned probably before, but I'm Jeroen, co-founder and CEO of Salesflare, and Anda is co-founder and CEO of Knotch, I suppose. Um, I looked at your website yesterday because I wanted to try it, but it says get a demo and there's no pricing. So
Mhm.
for me as a smaller business, that's kind of scares me.
Yeah,
Uh,
it usually means it's expensive.
yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, I mean, it sounds interesting. We do a lot in content marketing and tracking it better. We're currently using Google Analytics, and it's well in combination with Segment and I don't know what, and trying to query some stuff in a BigQuery. but it's very, very hard to track things. Is that specifically what Knotch focuses on, or?
Yeah, exactly. It's really difficult to track content performance because the number one reason is because you have to pull in a bunch of different data sets from a few different platforms, and the data tends to be siloed. This problem or friction point is even bigger in a big company because you have an SEO team, and then you have a CDP team, you have an analytics team. And so usually the content team, which is a different team, has to pull in data from everyone, and everyone gives them the data in different formats. The data doesn't talk to each other. And ultimately, content is not just meant to drive conversion. Oftentimes we create content because we're trying to educate people, or we're trying to create brand awareness, or we're trying to build an audience, right? Like we're trying to get people to sign up to newsletters. So how do you map content to business outcomes? And then how do you build measurement frameworks that correlate content to those outcomes? And then finally, how do you streamline the data collection and the data analysis so that these insights aren't like, a month later when you've managed to put all your Excel together, but they're actually real time, enabling you to be kind of agile and data driven. We are definitely going down market. So we're focusing on small businesses later this year. But we started with like the biggest of the biggest, Ford, Bank of America, JP Morgan. And now we're working with Square and Dropbox and a few kind of we're calling them smaller companies. They're still huge, obviously, but and we're starting to think, okay, what's the self-serve product that you could just come to our website and sign up to? We are now our own customer because we also make content. So we're like the guinea pig for the small business offering, and we're building it aggressively over the next 6 months.
That's cool. I'm looking forward to that, because the main issue we're having is that our content, I mean, a part of it drives direct conversions, but a large part doesn't. It's just a first contact point with our brands.
So does it do anything, right? Like that's the question. And what does it do? And should you be continuing to make it or not? Should you make some of it or not? Yeah, there's a lot of questions that are currently unanswered, and I think the teams are just using their gut.
Yeah. Now the going up market is also down market is also very interesting. We're personally going up market, so let's discuss that later, perhaps. I've marked it as a topic. But first, maybe the founding story. Knotch wasn't a content intelligence platform, if you want to call it like that.
I do want to call it. I think I'm trying to create that category, so please keep using those words.
It's like Rand Fishkin is trying to call his Spark2 audience intelligence platform. I think you're trying to do the content intelligence.
Exactly.
But you guys didn't start off like that, right? It started off like a social network, sort of?
Yeah, so we started off as a social network that was connecting people based on their opinions about something. So you could come to Knotch, the consumer app. It was a mobile app, and share how you feel about Trump, for example, and see how everyone else felt. And you could kind of filter through to see the positive opinions, the negative, the neutrals, and the opinions would then start conversation threads. So you would have people sometimes fighting, sometimes debating. And it was fascinating to see the type of engagement that we got. We grew the community pretty quickly. We got featured by Apple as one of the main kind of apps in the App Store. And at the time, that was still a great thing. I actually don't know if now it gets you any downloads anymore, but at the time it was a massive thing. And the issue honestly was that it was really difficult to moderate the community and to ensure that we are continuing to host and encourage high quality conversation, safe conversation, etc. And I think that's where we are seeing a lot of these massive social networks run into now, and also not be able to really have great answers to how they're going to solve for those problems. But for me and my co-founder, we didn't feel particularly passionate about that problem. We were data nerds. I'm a data nerd. He's a design nerd. We built a beautiful app that was collecting great data, but we weren't necessarily the entrepreneurs that were going to build the next social network. We wanted to just be in the world of data and to empower people to kind of better understand that data and make decisions based on the data. And so in a weird way, what we now do was really what we always wanted to do. We just took a different start to it, which happens a lot. I'm seeing you're playing with your dog.
Yeah, no, my dog is snoring a bit too loudly, so I had to stop her.
You just hit it with the toy.
I threw a little plush toy on her, and she's still sleeping. Anyways,
Good.
happens. No, so I think you even raised funding with the social network, right? How is it to raise funding with an initial idea and then switch it? I know that it happened, for instance, to the founders of Slack. They raised money for a game thing and then turn it into a team chat application or collaboration app.
Yeah.
How did that work out for you?
Well, look, I think fundraising has a really simple rule, which is you have to raise money from good people. And if you raise money from good people, you're fine. Like they know that the reality of the journey is that it changes. And by the way, it should change, because if it's not changing, then you're not responding to the signals that you're getting from the market. I don't think there's a lot of examples out there of entrepreneurs who started with a really clear idea and continued executing on the exact same idea all the way to IPO. I really don't. So the right investors are going to get behind an entrepreneur, not behind an idea, especially early stage, and will continue to support the entrepreneur as they go through their journey of figuring things out. And I'm a first-time entrepreneur, and so is my co-founder. So some of this stuff is just normal, right? Like entrepreneurs don't start companies because they are people who like to learn from other people's lessons or from books. We start companies because we like to hit our own head against the wall, which by the very definition of it means that we're going to learn the lessons the hard way. So the investors that are investing in first-time entrepreneurs, I think, should expect that the idea will change, the product will change, the team will change, the market will change, etc.
Yeah, and how big was your team when you made that pivot?
6 to 7 people. It was really just me, my co-founder, and our early set of engineers that we were working with at the time. And we also moved the company from Silicon Valley to New York. So all of us moved to New York.
Wow, and everybody was on board with all that change, or?
Eventually. I think it probably took 6 to 12 months for everyone to get on board and for everyone to move. I think we had 1 or 2 people that continued working with us remotely, and then eventually we parted ways and we continued building the team in New York.
Yeah. Okay. So it wasn't too big of an issue. I mean, the move was maybe the biggest issue to overcome.
Yeah.
How many co-founders do you have?
Just one.
Just one. How do you think about if you're multiple co-founders? What does your co-founder do? He's like responsible as a CTO, I hear it?
His background is in design. Both of us have a kind of a deep level of technical expertise that it's like a muscle that we have, but we haven't really used in a long time. So we know enough to be dangerous, and we know enough to engage in a really productive conversation with the engineering team. But he's the design nerd and I'm the data nerd. So I run revenue and all the functions that ladder up into that, and there's growing. We're kind of inventing a new function every like 2 to 3 months now. I run marketing, people, finance, operations, etc. And then Aaron, my co-founder, runs product design and engineering, and marketing and people actually reports into both of us. But we cross over into each other's territory all the time, and he works very closely with our CRO, and I work very closely with the lead engineers, especially on projects that are more data science driven.
Yeah. It sounds a bit like the split I have with my co-founder. He's more on the technical side, more the product and the engineering and all these kind of things, and I do the things that you do. Very similar split. How do you think, by the way, then, if you think about responsibility split, how do you think about equity split? How did you guys arrange that? Did you go for a 50-50 split, or did you use a more complex formula that is maybe fairer in some way, or?
Yeah, well, let me speak maybe less about us. We had kind of unique situation because I actually started the consumer facing product with a different co-founder. And started or restarted Knotch as what it is today with my current co-founder. But in general, I've advised many founders, and I've seen a lot of friends start companies. And the default is let's split it all equally. And I am personally not a big fan of that, after having seen how that plays out in a few different situations. And the reason why is because it's very rare that an idea, and the passion behind that idea and the blood, sweat, and tears behind that idea, is equally distributed across the founding team. Usually there's one person that's really leading the charge, the person who had the original idea, the person who is going to kind of go to the ends of the earth, to the world, to make this happen. And so I would say that person should have some level of a controlling stake, whether it's, if there's 3 co-founders having like 1 to 2% more, or if it's 2 co-founders having 1 to 2% more. I think that would be fair, because you never want to be in a stalemate. You don't want to be blocked by indecision, and a recognition as to who's going to actually make the final call is important in the equity split. That's my opinion. And then the second situation is where you have a founder who, starts the company, raises the money, hires maybe like an outsourcing team to build an MVP, and then goes out to find a co-founder who's technical or product, et cetera. And I don't think there's such a thing as as an equal co-founder at that stage. I think there's probably a 10% co-founder at that stage. And I think it's really dangerous to give someone between 10 to 30%. I think you're either above the 30% with a kind of true equal partner, or you're below and around the 10% with a co-founder who's taking a big risk, but by then you already have money to pay them, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, what's exactly so dangerous about the 10 to 30% range, you think?
It's not dangerous. It's just that I think it's kind of wasted equity, because I think the co-founders who have the passion and the desire to take on the risk early deserve to have almost equal share to the original founder, so to say. And the co-founders who don't want to take that risk early and don't have the appetite, and want to get a salary on top of the equity, I don't think deserve to get more than 10%. And I've just kind of seen it play out in a lot of different examples all around me.
Yeah. Actually, to oppose your case, my co-founder and I started together. We got the idea together, we started working on it together, and we split everything 50-50. But yeah, I know that this is a one specific case, whereas you are in a totally different one. And there's something to say there as well. We thought for a moment about how to split equity, but in the end, we took on the challenge together. We said 50-50 and we went for it.
I think that works perfectly well. Maybe it's because I'm Eastern European. I like to think about the worst case scenarios whenever I make big decisions. And I've talked to a lot of investors and said, okay, why do startups fail before they get to Series A, let's say? And 95% of the time they fail because of people. People just don't get along. And typically it's some level of co-founder dynamic, because when you enter a relationship like that with someone, it's almost like a marriage. You have to make sure you have the right values, that, you're going to have children, you're going to hire people. You have to make sure that you have the right culture. So, kudos to someone who's put that much thought into it and got it right. And if everything's swimmingly going well and everything, is perfect and your energies are in sync, great. But I think most of the time there's some level of friction that appears at some point. And so you want to have someone who's in charge of making the final decision.
Yeah. No, yeah. In our case, we're sort of like mom and dad, I guess.
Exactly.
It's we are also a bit opposed. Like he's more more into the emotions. I'm more into the rational stuff. He's more on the technical side, I'm more on the business. And there's a bunch of other things that sort of balance things out. He sees it big. I like to keep it under control. So all of that creates a sort of a balance. And so far, we've had differences, obviously. But it's working out still as a proper marriage. So,
that's awesome.
But yeah, I know it's a risk.
If you ever raise, I don't think you've raised money, right?
No venture rounds.
Yeah, if you ever get to raising venture rounds, that's I think when stuff gets really interesting, because
Yeah.
VCs will force you to have a lot of conversations that you wouldn't normally have about
Mm-hmm.
the types of rights that you have in, as co-founders, as executives, etc. And when you start creating a board, there's an interesting level of kind of conversations that enter. But it's great to push that off for as long as you can.
Yeah, we don't have a board exactly. Avoiding these kind of external pressures, we prefer, let's say, an internal search for the right solutions and the truth, and not focus too much on what other people think. If you want to have a board, it's probably very important. I don't have a whole lot of experience with it so far, so to find people that are going to give it the advice you need. And you need to be very careful with creating one, I think. I know that you do have a board. How does that work out for you? How do you manage it? How much time do you spend? How does your board sort of look? How did you go about, it's a lot of questions at once, sorry.
That's okay.
Forming it?
Yeah. So I think it's important to not raise money too early and to not create a board too early. So I was advising someone who used to work on Team Knotch, who's gone on to start her own company, and she's raising she raised a pre-seed and she's now raising a seed. And she said, and I'm going to give this person a board seat. And I said, wait, why are you giving a board seat?
Yeah.
Board seat at seed? It doesn't make sense. And she said, well, I know I'm sending investor updates monthly. So why are you sending investor updates monthly? Who are you doing that for? Is it helping you or is it helping them? So I think it's really important not to get caught up in the dynamics of investors, boards, etc., and to do whatever makes sense for your business. Because as a CEO, your job is to prioritize the company, not to prioritize other people's wishes and what TechCrunch says you need to do. So for me, I have a simple rule, which is raise money from good people. And that simple rule applies to the board as well, which is put good people on the board. And so our board conversations are actually very productive. It doesn't feel like, going to the dentist and being in the chair for 3 hours as they examine everything that's good and bad. It truly feels like a conversation. And I think it's partially because of them and partially because I don't like surprises in board meetings. So I catch up with my board members probably on a monthly basis. With one of them, I have a catch up every 2 weeks. With another, I probably talk every month. With another, I probably talk every 3 months. But overall, we have a really good cadence of radical candor and really honest conversations. And so when we get to the board meeting, which I just had this week, partially why I'm in Manhattan, when we get to the board meeting, it's really just about, here are 3 conversation topics that we need your brains on. And I have my 2 most important executives in the meeting, and we're all just brainstorming essentially. So yeah, I believe in board meetings. They've helped me tremendously. It's a good forcing function because every 3 months I get together with my executive team and we look at the numbers, we ask ourselves the hard questions, we test our assumptions, and then we do all of that in front of the board as well.
Yeah. Linking a question from the audience to that. So an audience member is asking, what type of support do you consider the most important for a founder in an early stage startup? Is it financial support, educational support, mentorship one-on-one? So maybe what is the sort of support you look for in board members? Maybe to link it up to the rest of our conversation.
Well,
and maybe beyond the board members as well.
Yeah, so I think for early stage founders, obviously not the board, because I don't think you should have a board if you're that early stage. So what's the most important support you can have as an early stage founder? I think it's emotional support. And maybe that was not the answer that was expected or intended, but I don't think we spend enough time as founders talking about mental health and the importance of having a really good system of friends, family, partners, whatever it is, and other founders that you can truly be open and vulnerable to. And I've had I have a lot of friends who struggle and have struggled in many different ways. When I was living in Silicon Valley, 3 of my friends committed suicide, and they were all early stage founders. So the pressure that you're under, the pressure, the chaos, it's very intense. I think Elon Musk said that being a founder feels like eating glass while staring into the abyss. And there's a point at least once a day when I feel that way. So I think it's important to have emotional support, especially in the early stages when it's just so every day feels like a battle for survival. Other types of support, I think other founders that have gone through this, it's just incredible to be surrounded by people who can listen and then say, you know what, I tried that one and it didn't work out for this and this reason. And I think I've saved a lot of time by having some of these friends and mentors around me. And then finally, I think it's important to have 1 to 2 practitioners. So ultimately, we're all building products, especially if you're a B2B, like enterprise software company. We're all building products for customers. So I think having 1 to 2, real customers that you have around you that can critique you in a way and you can bring early ideas to and get good feedback from is really important as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Actually, I have a podcast, and on that podcast, we try to uncover for founders like what it is they do to stay sane, and it's a bit different for everyone. I personally give a lot of importance to sleeping. I recently started eating differently as well. Habits and when it comes to splitting up time a bit, not to be stuck to the phone all day and take everything with a sort of I wouldn't call it stoic per se, but so I personally don't have the glass eating abyss kind of feeling. That's anymore.
Great. Good for you.
Because in initial stages, I must say very much. When we were always running out of money, and some other thing was, you could see the whole thing crashing before you could pull it back up. Then that felt pretty.
I go through stages. I went through that stage early on, and then it was great. And you kind of, I think when you're growing, you kind of go whoop, and then you go like that, and then you go whoop, and then you go like that. And it's kind of the journey, right? It never goes up like this. It just kind of goes like that. And so I think my eating glass feelings really depend on whether we're on the up curve or on the down curve. But yeah, good for you. I mean, I've tried everything from meditation to journaling before going to sleep, journaling when I wake up. Running. I change my diet 50 times. I do intermittent fasting. I stop drinking. I drank more. I've done everything. And then, so at the end of the day, I'm still human. So I have feelings, and sometimes they take over.
Which of these experiments worked best? Which is the one you kept?
All of them.
You kept all of them?
I kind of, I mean, I still journal. I still intermittent fast. I stop drinking, then I start drinking. I mean, I just kind of mix it up. I think I wish I could say to you that I think there's too many people in the world and too many entrepreneurs who say I figured it out. It's about this. It's about this vitamin C powder, and if you take it once a day, it's going to fix all your problems.
That's not gonna work.
I haven't figured it out. I think I'm just trying to adapt, because building a company means everything's changing all the time. So we all have to continue changing and adapting and being real with each other.
Yeah, that makes sense. A link to this, there's a slightly more specific question from Adrian. From your experience, what can founders do to vent and or cope with the frustration from one experiment to another? And in general, the fact that their voice is noise background for many years while building a great product.
Well, I don't know if this is going to work for other people, but I really like quotes. So I take quotes that resonate with me and I write them down on these little cards, and I have them all around my desk. One of them, I'll give you just a few. So one is, if everything feels under control, you're just not driving fast enough. And this is a Formula One race driver that actually said it. So he meant it probably in a different way, but I think it's very applicable to me. And I think to the journey of growth, because you want to feel like you're biting more than you can chew. It's actually a sign of something good, not a sign of something bad, even though our brains are like, oh my God, what the fuck? Another one is success is the ability to go from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm. And that, I think, relates a lot to what Adrian said in this quote, because you don't learn from other people's lessons when you're building a company. You're learning from your own lessons. And to do that, you have to fail. I think you just have to embrace that failure is an ally, not an enemy. And you have to teach your team that failure should be celebrated. And I know we hear this a lot. It's just so hard to do because it's not in our nature to celebrate failure. But I think especially early on, there's more failure than there is success because you're learning so much. So you have to figure out a way to celebrate failure and just to vent. My poor husband, it has been my, coach and therapist and friend and everything in between. So find someone you can torture with all of your feelings and it will make it better.
Find someone you can torture. That's another quote you can put in.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe I see a lot of questions starting to come in about first customers, sort of product market fit and all that. Let's start moving towards that. Maybe because in your journey, I think you first found money. How did that work?
Yeah, well, my first money was my own. And then I also managed to get my grandmother on my mother's side to give me some money. So she was my earliest investor. And then once I managed to put a really small initial team together and start paying them to build the product and quit their jobs, essentially. I did everything I could to get connected to investors and to create relationships with them. So one of my biggest beliefs around fundraising is that it's really a relationship game more than it is a pitching game. If you're a first-time founder or if you're working on a really difficult idea to explain or just a very new idea that few people would understand, investors are like sheep. They work in herds. And so it's very rare that you're going to go into a herd of sheep and go do one pitch and then another pitch and then another pitch and get different results. Typically, they all go either one way or another. So how do you cause a chain reaction that is in your favor? And the answer for me is you build a set of really strong relationships with 2 to 3 investors that you can convert before going to the herd. So I spent a lot of my time building those relationships and getting people to trust me, because it's not about the idea and it's not about the product and it's not about the market. It's about the person. And it's a lot of pressure, right? Because you go in front of these people and you say, trust me, I'm going to build a big company. I don't know exactly what it's going to be, how long it's going to take, who I'm going to do it with, but just trust me. And, funny enough, it works. That's what early stage investors do. They're really good mind readers and personality readers, and they can tell if you're the sort of person who will give up when it's tough, or you're going to continue going.
Yeah, that's good advice. I feel about it the same way. We did talk to a series of angels before we raised and did a whole lot of them, but at some point it all started acting like a herd. It's a bit less like VCs. They have their little clubs, and if they go to a conference, they have their little VC dinner, and they all meet each other, especially when it's like Series A and Series B, like passing of deals to each other, I don't know what. But still, within the angel community in a country, usually they're also connected. They are in sort of groups, and some know each other, and things go from the one to the other. So if you can convert the first, it's easy to make it sort of roll over to the other ones.
Right. I don't know how it is in Europe, but it sounds like it's very similar in the US. They're all very connected. Even VCs, they're all super connected. And it's almost like I think it should be illegal, because like collusion is not legal, for almost any other industry. But in this particular realm, they literally call each other and they go, "Have you met this company? Are you going to put money in?" And then it just causes the chain reaction.
Yeah, actually, in my previous job, I used to work for one of the major he was one of the partners in our company, one of the major business angels in Belgium. And one day I was in the office next to him, and I heard him making all these calls. He was like, "I met this amazing company, you should invest." And then he would call the next one, "I met this amazing company, you should invest." It was really like getting all the others to invest as well. It's really how it works. And then on the Series A, Series B, I saw a really nice video on that this week. It's the founder of Social Capital on This Week in Startups. He makes his explanation about how it all works. The one investor working with the next, then offload their investment and make their whatever. You can Google it, I suppose. Just This Week in Startups, and then with I think it's called Shamant or something. Founder of Social Capital. Yeah, that's him. From first funding to first customers, how did you go about that? How did you find them, or how did they find you? Perhaps, I don't know.
Yeah, very similar approach to how I thought about my first investors, which is that you have to get people to believe in you. If you're selling to big enterprises, right? Like that's big enterprises, that's the game. It's founders and C-level executives meet, and the founder sells a vision, and the C-level executive says, "I'm going to give you money in the hopes that you can deliver this for my team.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to give you a year to get it done." So that's what I did. And that's why we moved to New York, because for what we were doing and who we were selling into at the time, it was a much better environment for me to gain traction in.
All the big agencies or the corporates?
No, actually, not agencies. It was the CMOs. So the big marketing chiefs of these massive companies who have billions of dollars in investments across agencies, social networks, etc. And they make a lot of decisions they around their tech stack now. So the CTO used to be the only owner of the tech stack, and I think now technology really has seeped throughout the company, and so the CMO actually has a MarTech stack that they work with, and an ad tech stack, and more stacks that are coming up for marketers. So that's who I was meeting with, and we started working with these I think it was 2 to 3 big companies at the beginning. And then we expanded that to 10, and then we expanded that to 30, and now we're expanding that to hundreds.
Yeah, and before you sort of started selling, did you test your idea in some way, and how did that work? It was sort of a question from Edward.
So I wish I could say that I did. I didn't. It's not because I shouldn't have. I think I should have. But I think founders sometimes have this bias to go from research to action in nanoseconds, because I personally at least lack the patience to properly test and research something. As the company has scaled, so we're now almost at 100 people. It's very hard to be as a founder, I could 100% continue being that person. As a CEO, I'm learning how to act not just as a sole captain of a ship, but as a captain with a team that has to move the ship together with me. And in order to do that, actually testing and researching ideas is really important, because it gives more people on the team investment in the original idea, an ability to get close to it and understand it deeply, to be a part of the testing process, to become invested in the what and the why and the how. And then finally, when you're ready to go execute, to all be aligned and to start kind of pointing the ship in that direction. But it's a lesson for me. I wouldn't say that that's my DNA. My natural DNA is just to get shit done.
Yeah, similar here. I think we started off, we made a deck and a prototype very quickly. And then we started going around and trying to sell it to people, and they would have all kinds of objections, but we didn't really super learn much. We did then go back and do customer research. I did like 30, 40 interviews while we were starting up sort of the functional specs and development. And honestly, if I would do it again, if I would start a new company, I would do that first. But do it as fast as possible and do some minimal tests by putting up a landing page, trying some messaging, and do these kind of things in parallel, because these kind of interviews, you don't all schedule them in one block in the week or something. They come. But I would honestly do a little bit of testing more and researching before starting. It's hard because you just want to get started. Because it's an awesome idea, and I don't know what,
but it's also a bit like I think it's a famous quote by Henry Ford that I asked what people wanted, and they said a faster horse, right? And he built them a car. So I think it's a question of also like, are you trying to build an incremental product, or are you trying to build a category, like a completely new thing, right? So when you said content intelligence platform, that's why I'm so insistent that we say CIP, right? Because I'm trying to create something that doesn't exist. I'm not trying to build something that's incrementally better on top of Google Analytics. I'm truly trying to build something new. So you have to be a visionary. You have to obviously do a lot more research and testing, but you have to understand when exactly do you do that and how much do you want to trust it? Because I don't think many times buyers know what they don't know. And so that's, I think your role as a founder is having that gut feeling for the market and what product you should go execute on.
Yeah, but I think a lot of that comes from within your research, not focusing on like, would you like to have, but rather like, what are the issues you have now?
Yeah,
and then thinking
true.
about, and then thinking like, oh, content marketing, we cannot track it. And we don't know how much it brings us. And then you have this issue, which brings you to a state where it's like, okay, maybe Google Analytics isn't good enough and we need something totally different. And then,
but then I think our advice to everyone listening should be, don't test the idea, rather research the pain, right? Like really ask questions about the pain that people experience. And then you go build your idea and put it in market and have an MVP and see how it works.
Yeah, definitely. It's I think How to Web does workshops on this with Bob Moesta. I don't know whether I'm fucking up his name or not, but sorry for the word. Pardon my French. But he does this kind of jobs to be done workshops, really looking at what is the exact pain, what is the progress we're trying to make, what is the buying process, and all this kind of thing. So surely look that up in the workshops. Moving from there, perhaps to the next phase, we have a question here from Anda. Was there any for Anda? It's not from Anda. It's
if
for
there's
you.
Another Anda, I'd love to.
The question is, was there any clear revelation type of moment when you thought, this is it, I've made it? This sounds like a product market fit question, but although product market fit, people say that it comes like that, but does it really?
Well, I think at a high level, have I ever had a personal feeling that I've made it? The answer is no. The constant feeling that I have on a day-to-day basis is that I'm failing forward. I don't know how else to describe it except to say that my constant feeling is that I'm failing, but somehow that adds up to progress. So it's interesting, but you never really wake up and think, oh, what a great job I've been doing. This is awesome. In terms of product market fit, I think there are moments when you think, okay, like there's something here. I don't think you ever think I've made it, but when you get someone to pay you $500,000 for you to do something, I think you have this moment in the meeting where you're being very serious and everyone's, signing documents and agreeing on things. And then you leave the meeting and you think, holy shit, why are people paying me $500,000? Like, are they insane? Can't they just realize that I'm still trying to figure this out? I think there's moments like that, a bit of imposter syndrome, I think, that gets embedded in all of that with the entrepreneurial journey. But I don't think product market fit is a one and done. I don't think you get there and then, you just stop focusing on product and on market and on fit. I think the market always changes, customer demand always changes, your team changes, your assumptions change, and you have to constantly evolve the product. We launched a new product last year, and it had its own product market fit challenges. And how does it then fit with our current product? And now we're actually merging the two products into a platform, and that's going to have its own, platform market fit questions. So it never ends. It's a constant changing environment, and the chaos doesn't end or become any smaller. It just changes in nature.
And do you have any thoughts on how to look for product market fit? Do you have any system there, or is it just based on general gut feeling and I don't know?
Yeah, so I think it's not really a system. I can tell you how investors think about it, and I think we can talk about investors and all their downsides, but the thing that they are pretty good at is figuring out when companies have reached certain tipping points. So from a revenue perspective, there's a few stages. You have the 0 to 1 or 0 to $2 million. And that's the stage of, let's just throw shit at the wall and see what sticks. And, you get your initial customers, and then the question becomes, can you renew those customers? Can you go find more customers like that? Do you have the team to really support the growth? Is the product ready to scale? So you go from, I have a product and I don't know if someone's going to buy it, to I have a product, I know some people are going to buy it now. How do I support that? How do I scale it? How do I, build the team around it, et cetera? So that's the 0 to 2. And that's, I think, usually when companies raise a Series A. Then you have the kind of 1 to 5 or 1 to 6 or 7, depends really on your ACV. But that's, I would say, the stage where you go, okay, well, I can sort of think about how I support it. I can sort of hire a team. We can sort of scale the product. And that's when you raise your Series B, is to say, okay, we've come longer. We now feel like we have the initial product market fit, and now we're going to raise money to hire an executive team that has done this before, and all they do is come in, take the kernel of an idea and just scale it out. That's actually, I have found that to be a really difficult stage, because you have to create a new foundation for the company and for the product and for the go-to-market strategy. And then when you have that team really come in, you start scaling and you see the kind of 10 to 100 million kind of growth. And you probably have one other stage around 30 to 50 million when you may have to do another team change. You may have to rethink your processes, because things tend to break at those levels. So you break after 1, you break after 5 or 6, you break after 30, and then you break around 100 again and rebuild.
Yeah. I think most of the founders listening to this are probably rather early stage founders. So what advice would you have for them regarding finding product market fit? Like, don't do this or do this.
Yeah, I think don't waste time trying to push a rope up a hill. I don't know if everyone's familiar with that. I think it's an American saying. Well, you know how if you're trying to push a rope up vertically, you can't, because it bends.
Yeah.
So oftentimes, because we are very ambitious, diligent people, we will find a customer and say, for sure, they're going to want what I have. And you have a meeting with them and they say, oh, this is really interesting. You should meet my innovation partner. There's this innovation budget that I'm going to give to this. And the first thing is, innovation budgets are bad news. You don't want to come out of the innovation budget, because that budget is not replicable. Second, if you don't come out of a meeting with people nodding their heads and saying, this is a pain and I really need you to solve this, then it's still, you haven't found product market fit. Even if they give you money, even if they're ready to trial or experiment something. So don't confuse that with real data. And I think just keep going back and iterating on your pitch and iterating on your product until you come out of a meeting and everyone's like, I desperately need that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the people you're targeting, at least. I think the founder of I'm forgetting now the emailing app. Do you know what I mean? Well, he
Mailbox?
think again mailbox. No, it's another one, a newer one. You pay a subscription. It doesn't matter. He thinks about it that way. If I think 40% of your target market would not be able to live without your product, they would be very disappointed. Then you have found product market fit. But there's two ways of doing that. It's adapting your product, or it's adapting your market, because it's product market fit after all. And it can be if you just focus down very much on the right market, then you could find product market fit that way.
Yeah.
It's a way of thinking about it.
I think it's hard. I think you research the pain and you start with the pain, right? So if people, in my case, they would say to me, content's just really hard to measure. It's just really hard. And then you say, okay, well, how and why and how do you measure it today? And tell me more. And how are the data flows going from this team to this other team? Does anyone make decisions around it? Do you believe content is an important driver of business? Like, you just ask a lot of questions. I don't think you necessarily have to change the market once you found the pain, but make sure you find pain before you build a product. And then once you found the pain, just really get very curious about the pain.
Yeah. Link to that. Link to the questions you just asked. An hypothetical person. Karina asked the question: how should startups go around investing in branded content, and how about established SMEs versus larger businesses? Maybe we can enlarge the discussion towards not just branded content, but content marketing. When should startups start thinking about investing in content marketing, and how should they think about it?
First of all, this market is so early that branded content and content marketing it could be the same thing, it could be different things. So, different people have different definitions for branded content and for content marketing. So I think of any content that is created by a non-editorial news organization as both branded content and content marketing. So as long as the content's coming from Knotch, that content has a commercial purpose. We're not just making content to tell the world about the latest thing that happened in Cluj, but we're telling them about content intelligence, and our purpose is commercial. We want eventually to get buyers to understand more about content intelligence and eventually buy Knotch. So I don't think, I actually think you have to start as soon as you can. In the early stages, you have existential problems. Like, you need to figure out how to survive. You have to find a co-founder, figure out your equity split. You have to figure out how to, eat and have money to eat. You're just dealing with stuff that's bigger fish to fry, so to say. But I think as soon as you have your initial team and you have some level of stability, content is the secret weapon and the strategy that a lot of disruptors have used to build a loyal audience and a loyal following that eventually becomes a customer base. And then even after they become a customer base, we are seeing more and more companies continue to create content in order to further attract that customer base and keep them engaged. So even when we work with Dropbox, they are deploying our technology on pre-sale content. So really high level content that they're doing with the New York Times to just raise awareness. They're deploying us on educational content. They're deploying us on product content. And they're actually also deploying us on their developer guides, which is post-sale content. And in that way, we're able to follow the entire journey and understand the inflection points in that customer's journey with Dropbox based on the content they're consuming. So I think it's really good to start early. The barrier to entry is so low. You can, as a founder, you can just start writing LinkedIn posts. You can create your blog, right? And drive people back to your website and use your content as an acquisition mechanism. And I think it's important to be opinionated about what you're building and create a thought leadership brand for your company, because ultimately we're all trying to disrupt someone else, right? And so creating authority and credibility on a topic is super, super important.
Yeah. Maybe to contradict you slightly, just to give two different opinions. We have an enormous amount of content marketing right now, and but in the very first, I think 2 years or something, after we started, we had zero content marketing. I always stayed away from it because I knew it was an enormous amount of work. At least if you want to go for it, really, it's a lot of work. So I really focused on making sure we had the right product, selling it, and all those kind of things. Basically, surviving. It's only after we started sort of going from a very manual sales process to a slightly more self-guided one. We started launching online, like that. You could start a trial. It was that we started switching to content marketing. Now we have content marketing all across the funnel, from very top of funnel content that drives a lot of traffic but doesn't convert very well, to very closely related content to the product. Like if you type how to send a mass email in Google, you'll find us somewhere, and then it's explained how you do it with Salesflare. And it works really well for us. But I wouldn't start too early personally. I don't know what I would do if I would start over again, actually. And by the way, for those interested, on our blog we have a startup funding masterclass. And we also have a content marketing masterclass. Just type content marketing masterclass Salesforce in Google and you'll find it. And you can go way deeper in the topics that we discussed today. How do you guys use content as a content intelligence company? What is the advice you can give? Is there any secret nugget you have that you can now share with all the rest of us, and it's not secret anymore? Or
Well, I think our biggest secret weapon is that we use Knotch. And coming soon, so stay tuned for everyone to have access to it. But I think it's important to have, as you described, to have a content strategy that aligns to your customer journey. And I know it sounds simple, but actually a lot of people don't do it. Even in the really big companies who have 50-person content teams, you ask them, why do you make content? And sometimes, most of the time, actually, people don't really know what the answer is. So knowing that you are creating a set of content assets that are meant to educate people and measuring them against that, not conversion, because you're really just putting them out there to have them at the top of the funnel or the beginning of the customer journey. And then creating a set of content assets that are meant to drive conversion and measuring them against what they're intended to do. But I don't think there's a secret sauce. I think really just creating high quality content to separate from the noise is the most important thing.
And if you create top of funnel content, what are some of the best tips to actually make sure that these people come back? Like, because them reading that and they won't convert, how do you make sure they actually convert at some point?
Yeah, I think it's really important to not just create content for SEO purposes. I think a lot of small companies think that if they win at the SEO ranking game, they win at everything. SEO is just getting people to your content. The real question is, are they getting value out of your content? So, I mean, that's really a big part of what we do, is figuring out, are they getting value and are they likely to come back? But ultimately, you just have to put yourself in the shoes of your customer and have a lot of empathy for what they actually would like to read, not just the title they would like to kind of land on. I know we only have 2 minutes, and I saw a question come up and I just wanted to quickly take it, if you don't mind.
Go for it. What's the question?
So Radu said, how many times did you think of giving up and what made you not to? And I actually want to ask you first. Have you ever thought about giving up?
Really giving up? No. I mean, feeling like, oh my God, sure. But I have not thought yet about actually saying like, okay, I stop today. This is it. And
you've never done it, but have you thought about it?
No, I've never thought about, okay, this is the day I'm gonna think about talking to my co-founder or whatever. No. So I think we're at 0. But what made me stick with Salesflare, it's the fact that we're building something, and that despite all the steps backwards, I can see us going forward. Like you said earlier, failing forward. And the fact just that we're building a product, we're building a brand, we're building a team, We have customers on board that are really hoping we succeed because they put all their data in our CRM. So it's really all that keeps me going, and a team that is on board that has a job, that enjoys working together, tight-knit sort of little community. That makes that it's not just about me anymore. It's something bigger that I cannot just drop from one day to another. So it comes with responsibility, I would say.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've always said that I think there's one simple rule to entrepreneurship, which is that companies don't fail, people give up. And so if you want to succeed, just never give up. And to that extent, I don't even think it matters how many times a day you think about giving up, as long as you don't give up. And I think what keeps you going is different for different people. Sometimes it's the team, sometimes the product, it's the mission, it's, it's your dog, whatever makes you not give up, latch onto that thing and just don't give up. And eventually you will succeed.
Cool. I think we can end with that because we're on the hour now. Never give up. So guys, keep going. And see you on the next How to Web Live.
Cool. Thank you so much for interviewing me and for having a great chat today.
Thank you for being a great guest. Yeah.
Hi again. Thanks for sticking around and for your questions. We hope you had a great time with Anda and Jeroen. We surely did. There's more to How to Web Live, so follow our social media channels so you can join or watch any of the series episodes. Over and out, and I'll be seeing you soon.